What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Never Lag. I'm one of your hosts, Levi, joined by the man who fell in the pit, Zach. As always, Zach, how you doing?
Not bad. Not bad. How are you doing?
That is great to hear. I'm doing good. I'm way tired today. Tired,
Yeah.
the tiredest day of the week. It seems randomly, but other than that, great. So, of course, this is NeverQuest, which is our show where we unbutton our top button and let our hair down and talk about a random topic, as well as catch up on some of the games that we've been playing lately. So if you're into it, you can support us over on Patreon at patreon.com/neverlag, and of course right here on YouTube by watching or listening wherever you get your podcasts from. Let's get into it. So the topic for today, a little bit early, a little bit early on this topic, but we kind of wanted to take a look back at the year so far, January through at this point in May. We haven't exactly made it halfway through the year, but kind of nearing the halfway point of 2022. How do we feel about this year in video games? So, I mean, just right off the bat, how are you? What's your temperature on 2022 first half video game releases? I mean, how do we want to section this off? Because clearly there's a lot of backlog stuff happening as well. Um,
Yeah. Um, Interestingly, a lot of what I've played this year has been it's been a good mix. I feel like I've played a decent amount of new games. Um, I'm feeling pretty comfortable given my schedule and my job and having kids. I feel like I've made some good progress. I don't know. I've played maybe 10 to 12 games and finished many of them. Not all of them, but finished many of them. Um, so I'm feeling pretty good for where I'm at. I would love it if I could complete like a game a week, but I'm not quite to that level. Um, yeah, how's your list looking? How are you feeling? I'm curious how many games have you played so far this year, and how many of the games that you've played have you completed or beaten? I think either's fine.
um, wow, that's a good question. I have played. I'm looking at my 2022 list here. Currently, I have 18 games, and I'm just doing a quick scan through that. I've pretty much completed 18 games at this point. I've got 19 that I'm about halfway through, but it's not on this list yet. And as far as games I haven't completed, um, I can't think off the top of my head, but it can't be more than three. I usually don't play games that I don't intend to complete, so that number is usually pretty low. But yeah, so I mean, do you want to go through our personal month by month, not month by month, but just kind of our personal first half of the year games we've played and how we feel about it? Should we kind of look at 2022 and its actual releases? Um, Maybe we should start there. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So, as far as games that have released this year, yeah, starting there, how do you feel about 2022? How does it rate overall? What's your temperature? What's your out of 10? I mean, January through June is not usually, uh, a heavy season for game releases, but it seems like we've seen quite a bit because they all slipped from last year's holiday
Yeah.
window.
I feel like this was a very strong first half of the year in terms of, or very heavy first half of the year, kind of unusually so because of all of the delays from COVID and everything else. Um, and it's interesting because on the one hand, we've gotten a lot of games between January and now, and a lot of those games have been really good, but they've also been marred just a little bit by issues with technical problems at launch and or microtransaction fiascos. So it's kind of hard to nail down exactly how I feel about it. I mean, we've gotten a lot of games and many good games, and it feels like it's been a holiday season, even though it's been February, March, April. So I think in that sense, it's been pretty good overall. And even despite the technical issues and stuff, I think it's been a solid first half of the year. What do you think?
Yeah. Um, yeah, kind of like you said, and then also going back to all the games that have slipped from 2021. I think on paper, the first half of 2022 is, I think it's by far got to be the best first half of a year in video games that we've had release wise.
Hmm.
You just have so many big games. Clearly, the marquees being Elden Ring and Horizon Forbidden West.
Yeah.
Maybe lesser so, but still Gran Turismo 7. And then I feel like even Sifu was a pretty high profile indie game that released back in early February. So, oh, and then you have Arceus. We had a
Yeah.
Pokemon game that, kind of completely changed the formula. So I think if you take those five, was that 5 games? I think that's way more than we usually get um, in any given first half of a year. So on paper, I think it's been excellent. I do kind of maybe mirror, I don't know if this is what you were saying, but for me personally, it's kind of like this two opposing thoughts of like it's been an amazing first half of the year, but there's also been a lot of letdown for me in those games because going into 2022, you look at all the games that have been delayed and you're looking forward so much to Forbidden West, Elden Ring, Gran Turismo 7, especially those three for me. And now here we are in June looking back on, especially Forbidden West. Elden Ring had its issues too. Excellent game, enjoyed my time with it, but it surely launched with a lot of issues as well. But even taking that out of the equation, Forbidden West and Gran Turismo 7 um, really, really let me down and left me with a bad taste for both of those games. And so that's a bummer. It kind of puts a black mark on what should have been just a phenomenal bar setting first half of the year.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I end up looking back at it. But regardless of that, really quick before we get into, because I know we have quite a bit to talk about for what we've been playing. It's been a while. So um, now to speak more personally to our list and games we've played, um, if you kind of, it seems like you have your list there. How do you feel about the batch of games you've managed to play, whether or not they release this year? Do you have a pretty good batch? Lackluster? How do you feel about what you've gotten to?
It's been pretty good in my opinion. The bigger issue has been a couple of months out of the past, this year have been really busy for me personally. So in the month of April, like I barely played anything. And even May, I didn't make a ton of progress. In end of May, I started ramping back up. But yeah, so I've uh, do you think I should just go through my what's on my list and then highlight
Yeah,
what's been
yeah. Go
great?
through what you've played and maybe kind of speak to them or rank them or whatever you want to do.
All right. So, January, I finished up Subnautica Below Zero. So I had started that game in December of last year, but the majority of it I finished up in January, and that was a phenomenal game. So it came out last year. The original Subnautica was great. Below Zero somehow managed to uh, be on par, maybe even exceed the original. Certainly, at least live up to it. Its predecessor. Um, I also played Hob on the Nintendo Switch. It's not only on Switch, but it's I don't know, kind of a sci-fi. We've talked about it. It's a sci-fi kind of isometric,
Zelda-like game.
Zelda-like puzzly game, and that was good. Not it didn't blow me away, but it was still a lot of fun. I played Grime, which is a kind of bizarre Metroidvania set in this kind of fantasy world that is very. It's like it's hard to describe. I'll put up some pictures, but
It is. It actually is.
Grime was really cool.
It's a
I thought
weird world.
it was a weird world, but it was kind of captivating and a little bit unsettling. The gameplay and the combat was really fun. The exploration was pretty good. The world was very cool and different. Some really excellent boss fights. The story was interesting. The ending was pretty good. It was a really solid game. I liked Grime a lot. One of my I haven't played a whole lot of Metroidvanias, I guess, so it's in my top three. It probably doesn't say a whole lot because I've played like 4 or 5 Metroidvanias, but it's really good.
It's top 4 or 5.
Top four. I also played a little bit of Black Rock Galactic with you and some of our other friends, which is the
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah, we'll have a
multiplayer.
lot of crossover here.
Yeah, it's kind of the multiplayer dwarf game where you're like sci-fi dwarves mining, like, and yeah, that was pretty fun. So that's a game I did not finish. The others I mentioned, I beat all of those games. Black Rock Galactic, it's more of a multiplayer game anyway, but I don't know. I probably put somewhere between 7 and 10 hours into that. Moving on to February, I played Pokemon Legends Arceus, which I finished, and uh, that met my expectations. I'd say I liked it a fair amount. I have some issues with it. I think it kind of does what Pokemon does, where they do just enough for you to like it, and then they're kind of lazy in a lot of ways as well. Um, and then I started Kena Bridge of Spirits right before Horizon Forbidden West came out. I got maybe 8 to 10 hours into that. I was liking it quite a bit. I paused it simply because we then had our slew of amazing uh, AAA titles coming out. So I paused Kana. I plan to get back to that this summer. Um, I started Horizon Forbidden West, which I was really enjoying. But like we talked about, some pretty serious technical issues with that game at launch. Um, I ended up going out to buy a new TV, and I got it like an OLED TV that it looks pretty good on. It's sad that I had to do that. I probably shouldn't have done that. I needed a new TV anyway, so it's fine. But I know on your TV, it's just not playable, especially the performance mode. It looks terrible, and like I think that as well. On my TV, performance mode still looks really bad. The graphics mode looks. I think it looks pretty good for a graphics
But you
mode,
still haven't gotten back to that, really.
but I have I put a pause on it because I was really excited to try Elden Ring, but also because I was frustrated with those issues that we had with Horizon, as well as some of the like how they were handling updates. Like they were very communicative at first about the issues they were facing, but over the weeks it became apparent that they weren't really planning on fixing the core issues that people had with performance issues, and that was just it was just frustrating. And it wasn't as much like a spiteful, I'm going to stick it to them by not playing because what do they care? I already paid for it. But
Yeah,
it was
right.
more of I'm just frustrated, and there's so many other games to play. I am going to get back to Forbidden West. I love Horizons games, and this one, what I played felt better than the original, so I'm sure I'll get back to it and love it. But it did make me put it down and pause it, and so I played again 5 to 10 hours of Forbidden West before I put it down and picked up Elden Ring at the end of the month of February, which I really like. So what you're going to see is Elden Ring. I've basically been playing since February,
For
off and
three
on.
months, yeah.
I originally started it on PS5 and then decided to pick it up on PC because of performance and graphical fidelity. So heading into March, I actually then put down Elden Ring for a little bit and picked up Gran Turismo 7, which I liked a lot, but their decisions around microtransactions and then some of the foundational issues of like how the technology stack of their game works, uh, undercut the experience. So a great example of this we've talked about is I was doing like a time trial race where you're trying to like get a certain license
Good
by hitting a
times.
certain timing on a track. And I was on one that was really hard. Like you had to be on the millisecond around all the turns to get the gold trophy and to get your license or whatever it is. And so I had done this for I don't know 30 to 45 minutes, and I'm closing in on the finish line, and I think I'm going to make my time, and then I get booted from their servers because of maintenance. And it's like the reason it's a live service, quote unquote live service game, is because they're trying to manage the economy of microtransactions. And so it's the type of thing that doesn't need to be in the single player campaign that I was doing, but because of how they are monetizing the game, it impacted it. So a variety of things like that led to me kind of putting that away. Like, oh, I'm sure I'll go back to it. It's aside from those things, it's a pretty good game, and I like it a lot. But that was frustrating. I'll leave that there because I know you're probably gonna talk about that a lot as well. So to round it out, in March, I also played and finished Ori and the Blind Forest, which was a fantastic Metroidvania that
Oh
I
yeah.
highly recommend. I'm excited to play the second one at some point. Um, I also played and I started Death's Door, I think in January or February, but I ended up finishing it. I think I finished Death's Door in March at some point. I don't exactly remember, but Death's Door was a lot of fun. Kind of another isometric Zelda like game where you're solving puzzles, fighting little enemies, occasional boss fights. Um, it didn't blow me away, but it was very high quality across the board. It was a very solid video game. Not a ton of major weaknesses. The further I get from it, I like it. It is mildly memorable to me, but it doesn't stand out as like a mind blowing experience. I also played and finished Biomutant in March, and I think you'll talk about this as well. pretty good game. I liked it. I think it got more hate than it deserved. Like I don't think it's as bad as a lot of reviews led people to believe. I think it's a decently good game. It does have some issues, but I liked it a lot, and I'm excited to see what that studio does next. And then April, I barely did anything. It's like doing work stuff, and I played a little bit of Elden Ring, and I also played a little bit of Kirby and the Forgotten Land. I ended up kind of like I didn't hate Kirby, but it didn't grab me super hard, so that's kind of fallen into my on hold pile. And then in May, basically all I played in May was Elden Ring on PC and Yoku's Island Express on the Switch. Elden Ring continues to be phenomenal. Um, the
Phenomenal.
phenomenal game. Um, so I continue to love Elden Ring. I think I'm probably a little over halfway at this point. So when we recap at the end of the year, I'll have
Yeah,
Elden Ring in every
definitely
month again.
past
Um,
halfway. Yeah,
and then Yoku's Island Express was another kind of Metroidvania. It's like Metroidvania mixed with pinball on a tropical little island, and that was just a delightful little game. I finished that last week, a couple days ago actually,
so how
and
many?
that
What's the total on your list then?
my total
10.
on my list is 14 games that I've played and like 8 that I've finished. So
All
pretty
right. So
solid for me.
for all the ravenous Never fans out there, what's your top? I mean, going into June, what's your top three look like for
Mm-hmm.
2022?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to say so far Subnautica Below Zero. I'm gonna go with things I finished, like Horizon Forbidden West. I don't feel like I can speak to that, so I'm only gonna rank from the things I've finished. But I'd say Subnautica Below Zero, Elden Ring. I guess I said I would. Elden Ring I've played like 65 hours though, so I feel like I can rank that one.
Yeah,
So
that's fair.
Below Zero,
You
Elden
could do a
Ring.
review on it.
Yeah, I totally could. And for 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 the third one, I'm torn between Grime and Ori in the Blind Forest. I'll probably give the nod to Ori.
Really?
I liked Grime a lot, but I'll probably give the nod to
Yeah,
Ori. So probably yeah, Ori, Elden Ring, and Subnautica Below Zero.
that's a pretty good top three.
Yeah,
Definitely helped by some older games, but yeah, those are solid. I'm surprised that Grime competes as much with Ori for you, but at the same time, I haven't played the original Ori in several years at this point, so my memory is somewhat marred might be the wrong term, but overly inflated perhaps by the sequel, which is I think markedly better. So I imagine once you get around to the Will of
yeah.
the Wisps, that will not. I think you'll find that to be significantly better than both of them.
I think the biggest
But
drawback,
yeah,
or less of a drawback, but the biggest thing that Grime has that really boosts it up is its combat was so fun. And the first Ori doesn't really have combat per se.
it really
It's
doesn't.
more
Yeah,
more
that
traversal,
is a
and
thing.
it was excellent. But I think I really enjoyed Grime's combat and getting weapons and armor, and it was just really well done. So I think the second Ori will probably hit really well for me, given that it dives a little bit more into actual combat and boss fights.
Yeah, the second Ori actually has like a parry system and different, kind of like different weapons that you can use, like a heavier hammer or like a quick sword. Even though it's not like an actual physical hammer or anything. But
Yeah,
yeah, I can definitely see that. So
yeah.
for me, I'll make this quick here so we can get to what we've been playing. Like I said, I've got 18 games. It's kind of funny. I'm looking at my list, and I hadn't really processed this because we just kind of sat down and we're like, okay, let's talk about this today. What defines the first half of 2022 for me, unfortunately, is frustration. And I guess I should have known this because we've been talking about being frustrated for months now, either like 3 months, or I guess we started this 4 months ago. Um, but yeah, unfortunately, you look at this year and you're like Gran Turismo 7, Forbidden West, Elden Ring, all the things we said, such excitement, and I really will look back at the first half of 2022 with a lot of frustration. That's what I will remember because even Elden Ring, which I loved, gave me quite a bit of a headache at first. I mean, like you said, booting it up on PS5, it did not look good, did not run well, lots of pop in, forced us to buy it twice over on PC where it was passable. So, um, yeah, frustration. But I'm also looking at my list here and noticing that Gran Turismo 7 and Forbidden West are nowhere on it. Obviously, I
Hmm.
actually played a decent amount of Gran Turismo 7. I will go back to it at some point, especially if they enable the game fully to be played offline. I
Yeah.
think that's honestly like that's the switch that would work for me. If they took away the online requirement, I would probably dive back into that game. But as it is now, it's just kind of on the
Yeah.
back burner. So I'll run through my list here. 18 games. I played Genshin Impact, which we all know.
Of course.
Fist, Forged, and Shadow Torch.
Hmm.
Biomutant, Deep Rock Galactic, Immortal Phoenix Rising DLC, A New God. So there's 3 DLC for that game. I played the first one kind of randomly. Curse of the Dead Gods, Grime, Ender Lilies, Death's Door, Pokemon Legends Arceus. I played that really quick free game on Steam. What is it? Aperture Desk Job, which was
Oh
actually a tech
yeah.
demo for the Steam Deck, but it took like an hour and it was kind of cool and fun. Elden Ring, Golf Club Wasteland, Lost in Random, Sifu, Yoku's Island Express, Inscription, and The Pathless. And currently I'm working through Kana as we speak. So looking at my list, I like it's a good list. It's a really good list. I think I've even got 2 games in here that are definitely top 15, which is
Wow.
solid. I mean, top
Yeah.
15 is tough to crack once you've played
Hmm.
a certain number of games. So I'm trying to think any of these I want to specifically speak to. You covered a lot of it. Any call outs? Curse of the Dead Gods was actually free last month, so it's no longer free. But if you picked it up, I am not a fan of roguelikes. I think I've made that known, but yeah, it's just not my genre. I don't like the constant resetting. I find that more often than not, it's a gimmick and it doesn't actually enhance the game really. But this was one of the few games. This is probably the only roguelike I've ever played where I enjoyed the gameplay, the moment to moment gameplay so much, as well as the run to run gameplay. The choices you get to make for each run um, felt actually impactful. And so this is probably the only roguelike I've ever truly liked. And I platinum this game. It's one of my rarest platinums. I think it's down at like 0.1% of people have platinumed it. So it was very difficult,
Nice.
took a lot of time. Was a little bit frustrating to platinum, but once I finished it, I was like, "Huh, I guess I'm done with that game." But I kind of want to keep playing it, you know. So it's
Yeah.
just a good game. So maybe check that out, even if you're not into the genre. It might click with you. I don't know. I just thought it was really well done, and unfortunately, it was overshadowed by Hades when it
Right.
released back in 2020, I believe. Very similar time periods, very similar games, even though there's a
Yep.
lot of differences. But Curse of the Dead Gods definitely was overshadowed by,
Hmm.
one of many Game of the Year winners, Hades. So,
Right.
um, played quite a few Metroidvanias to start the year, like you said, Grime, Fist, Fortune, Shadow Torch, and Ender Lilies. All of which, as I've gotten further away, I'm very medium on. Like I thought they were really good, but they're not must plays. They're not excellent, in my opinion. Arceus. Oh, I don't know what to say about Arceus. It was kind of fun for a minute, and then it really
Yeah.
wore out its welcome. And I kind of noticed that when the new Pokemon video today that I watched, I was
Hmm.
watching it, and I'm like, man, I think the charm is worn off for me. Like I don't know. I was watching it, and I'm like, I just am not that interested. I'm interested in the new creatures, but we'll see. They need to do something gameplay wise to engage me a little bit more because after Arceus, I'm like, that was all right, but I don't really want to pour a bunch more time into that game. So, um,
Yep.
Lost in Random is a great little indie game that not many people have played. I don't think EA really didn't market this game at all, which is so bizarre. I don't know. I don't know who makes these decisions because it's a very quality game and it's incredibly unique. Like it's one of those games like It Takes Two was from EA, published by EA, right? Can't
I'm
remember
not
for sure,
sure.
but EA kind of has this track record of being like the worst company
Yeah.
who just
It,
constantly pumps out FIFA. But they also have these like projects where they work with smaller developers,
mm-hmm.
and these gems come out being published by EA, and this is kind of one of them. And I think it kind of fell through the cracks. It's a third-person action adventure game with this is weird. It's got dice mechanics as well as card mechanics in the combat in real time,
Yeah.
kind of Final Fantasy VII esque mixed with a card game. There's nothing like it, quite honestly. So
Right.
I've never played a game that fully does everything this game is pulling together, and it does a pretty good job of it. The story was actually engaging. The worlds are very cool to explore. It's very Tim Burton, so um, you know, check that one out if it sounds good to you. And then we'll get to one of these in what we've been playing. The only other callouts I have, let's say, all right, I'm going to rank my top three. My top three, I think, game of the year right now for me is really tough because I need a little more distance from Sifu to really calculate its weight for me.
Yeah.
But as of right now, I feel like Sifu is my game of the year over Elden Ring, um,
That
which
makes me
which
excited
could
to
sound
try it.
which could sound crazy to say. Elden Ring is fantastic. Elden Ring would be right there at two. We'll
Mm-hmm.
see at the end of the year if that shuffles at all.
Yeah.
Not just because other games come out, but because as you get further from a game, you're able to more properly estimate it, or maybe your memory fades and you're less able to properly estimate it. Who knows? Who knows what's more accurate, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those two are my top two, and then man, number three is going to be really tough at this point. I do not have a clear number three. Um, I could throw Genshin in there for number three. I've
I mean,
played
why
I've played
not?
more of that game. I know I've
Yeah.
played more of that game than anything. I really enjoyed our time with. I played more of it, I think, but Deep Rock Galactic was a lot of fun.
That was
I
fun.
keep wanting to go back to it, but there's just not enough time. So number three, I don't have a number three for you guys yet. You know what? Just because I'm gonna throw Inscription in at number three. Um, I just finished
Nice.
Inscription. We'll talk about it here in a minute. It was really fun. It was a good game. Really enjoyed it. Kind of stood out to me. And yeah, so there's my top three. I think it's been a good first half of the year. I
Yeah.
think we look to the end of 2022 and we kind of are a little disappointed feeling, obviously, because a lot of things we thought, okay, surely this year they get slipped to next year.
Yeah.
But I also do think we're headed right into um, the ghost of E3 season here, and I think we're going to learn a lot about what's coming out this year, even. And I would not be surprised if this fall looks a lot better than the community at large is projecting it to. A lot of people are very low on the end of this year, and I think we're going to get some really good stuff, not the least of which will be God of War Ragnarok. So
Yeah.
we'll see. We'll see. It could be a
Nice.
very, I mean, if you take the second half of 2022, that could happen. We'll see,
Mm-hmm.
and match it with what's happened so far. It could be a very stacked year when we get to the end of it. So, as far as what we have been playing,
But before we do that,
yeah,
I something I would love to
yeah. What do
do
you have?
is what I would love to hear what your thoughts are on your backlog for the remainder of the year. And obviously, things could change. We don't know exactly what we'll play. I pulled together a list of like 14 more games. So I played 14 games
Oh
up until
gosh,
now. I only finished 8 of them, but I thought I'll pick some of the games I'd like to play and maybe finish throughout the rest of this year. It could be kind of fun to like list out what do we think some of our important backlog games are that we'd like to finish this year, and then we could look back at the end of the year and see like did we actually get to some of those. um, I don't know if that's something you're prepared for, but I thought it might be fun. I could go
you know,
first.
you know, for me, yeah. Go ahead if you want to go through your list or maybe your top three or whatever you have of your
Yeah,
backlog.
I'll go through all of the games that I might like to play, and then I can tell you what my top are. So I'm probably going to play some Ark Survival Evolved because my dad is super into that game. You can like it's like a survival game where you can
That's
tame
the dinosaur
dinosaurs.
game, right?
Yeah, my dad loves
Your
dinosaurs.
dad's
I do
playing
too.
Ark Survival Evolved, huh?
So he's been playing it on his mobile phone forever.
Oh,
He's
I didn't know
played
that
it.
was on phone.
It is. They have it on both. He's put a ton of time into it, and he was like, "It'd be fun if we could like make our own tribe." Because I think one of my other brothers might play, and then one of our cousins has played that game. but we realized we can't cross-play PC and mobile. So my dad's like, well, I'll get it on PC. And then he proceeded to download it onto his Windows Surface, which you might imagine was a tall order for this little
Was weaker than
touchscreen
his phone.
portable device. So he managed to get it downloaded with the assistance of an external drive, fired it up, and he was like, "It feels like I'm playing video games in the 1990s." And I was like, "Okay, well,
Yeah.
we need to get you a PC." So he's now looking at building a PC, which I find
Oh goodness,
hilarious. I doubt
that's
we're gonna
funny.
do the whole water cooling treatment that we did.
Oh no, yeah.
It'll probably be
I don't
pretty
know that I
plug
will
and play.
again.
I think I will.
It's so
I
stressful, so stressful.
but it will do something plug and play. But anyway, I'm going to play some of that with him. Dinosaurs is always a good time. Some of the other games I'm looking forward to this year
Dinosaurs is always a good time. Great quote.
unless you're in person with them, then it doesn't end well.
And it's a bad time.
Um, I'd like to finish Kana. So I started that. I think I got maybe a quarter of the way through it. So I'd like to finish that. I watched you play some of Inscription, and we'll probably talk about that in the games we've been playing section in a bit. But I'd like to play that. I would like to get through Forbidden West this year at some point. It's not a major priority, but I'd like to play it before the end of the year. Lego Star Wars, I purchased and then proceeded to immediately lend to you. So at some point, I'll probably get that back and finish
You'll
the
never
main
get it back.
campaign.
You'll never see it again.
I'll have to buy it again. I also, after playing Elden Ring, because Elden Ring, I plan to finish that.
Oh yeah, your backlog should be very FromSoft heavy.
What I've decided is I don't want to burn myself out. FromSoft games are amazing, but they're hard and they take time and energy. What I'm thinking is I would love to finish one other FromSoft game this year. So I haven't decided.
Yeah.
It's either going to be Sekiro, Dark Souls 3, or Bloodborne.
Everyone in the chat, spam Zach with Sekiro. Let's get this going.
Leave a comment, vote with what you think I should play from FromSoft.
If we reach $100 on Patreon, Zach has to play Sekiro.
If we reach $1,000, I have to beat all 3 of them this year.
There you go. There you go.
That'll never happen.
Oh,
so we're set. But yeah, I'd like to finish one more FromSoft game, and I haven't decided. I'm going to kind of play it by what feels most exciting, but
yeah,
we'll see. I would like to play Sifu as well. I feel like that's another
Sifu's
hard
so
game.
good, dude.
But I played a few minutes of it at your place the other day, and it's pretty great. I would like to play one roguelike this year, and I haven't decided either Curse of the Dead Gods, which I picked up for free from PlayStation last month, or Hades, which I have on Switch. So I might play one of those. I would like to play Ori and the Will of the Wisps to finish, like get up to date with that franchise. I have Forspoken tentatively on this list. There are rumors that it's going to be moved to 2023, which we'll talk about in This Week in Gaming.
That can't be a backlog. What are you talking about backlogs?
Oh, I thought we were just talking about games we have like.
You said what's in our backlog that we want to finish.
Okay, I'll delete
You're
that.
like God of War Ragnarok, Forspoken, definitely Breath of the Wild 2.
Let me just delete a couple more things.
I can't wait to get to that.
For Final Fantasy 16, we'll delete that. And then if I have time, a couple other honorable mentions that I probably won't get to is Cyberpunk. I purchased it on a sale a while ago. And then any other FromSoft games we'll have to see. So that's my backlog at the moment. What does your backlog look like?
Here's the question. Over under, will Zach finish 2 of these games in his backlog before before calendar year 2023? I
finished 8 of the 14 games in the first half of the year.
Let us know in the comments. Okay, so my backlog is actually looking pretty thin these days. I this past month, maybe 2 months ago, I took because our backlog kind of becomes this amorphous blob, which I use that term a lot. It's one of my favorite terms, but it really does, of just hopeful wishes, like vapid. You're never going to play this game. So I sat down and I was like, okay, what's my actual...
Don't tell me that.
I was like, what's my actual queue? My gaming queue of games I'm going to play next that are on my backlog. And I ended up putting down, I think it was Sifu, Kana, Pathless, and there's another one I just finished that I can't remember. But I've gotten to all of them minus Kana. I'm halfway through Kana. So really my pertinent backlog is mostly done at the moment. I'm looking through certain games that have been out for a while that I actually do want to play that are on my backlog. I'm looking pretty pretty hard at Persona 5 Royal.
Nice.
Um, it's on sale right now. I'm eyeballing it. If I pick it up, I think I may. I mean, especially if we don't get anything too exciting over the next month or two, I
Mhm.
may jump into that. It's a huge undertaking, from what I've heard. It's many people's game of forever, like
I think
all time
Persona's pretty
favorite
good.
game, right?
Yeah. I don't
So
know if it'll
that
click with
one,
you, but it's a good game.
I don't know either. I don't know either. It very well might not, but it feels like a game I have to force myself to try.
You
So
have to. Yes, that is correct.
that's on my backlog. Oh, hey, there's Lego Builder's Journey. That's a short little Lego game I kind of wanted to check out. I've got Ghost Runner. I got it for free on PS Plus.
Mm.
I don't think I'll ever get to it. I
Mm.
think that's one of those that's just kind of there. I don't think I actually care that much. Tunic, I would like to
Oh
get to at some
yeah,
point this year.
I forgot it. I should add that real
Yeah,
quick.
I
Add
miss Tunic.
15, number 15 to my
There
backlog.
you go. Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I kind of enjoy the very just repetitive soup that is the Assassin's Creed franchise right now. I
Hmm.
do on some fundamental level.
Repetitive soup.
Repetitive soup.
Very
Bland
cool.
repetitive soup.
Yeah,
So,
nothing
great
like
band
it.
name. I keep thinking I'm going to get to Valhalla at some point, but every time there's a sale, I'm like, that is not steep enough. So,
Mhm.
I don't know if I will. That's kind of in my backlog.
Yeah.
It's also just such an enormous game that I probably wouldn't even finish it. Ollie Ollie World, I have not picked up still. I would like to get to that and see how that is. And then I'm looking through my Steam and my Epic launcher to see if there's anything really of note that I haven't gotten to. I've got Loop Hero, which I've heard a lot of good things about. I would like to check that out. And I think that's mostly it. I also got Hitman 3. I would
Heard
like
good
to
things
mess
about that.
around with.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard it's a bundle of fun. So that's kind of it, really. Like I don't know. Maybe I need to really dig into what my backlog is. It feels like there has to be more, but honestly, I feel like I've gotten through most of the things I really care about. So
I got two things you can
I
add.
guess that's good.
I got two things you need to add. One,
What do I need
Horizon
to add?
Forbidden West. Two,
Oh yeah,
two,
totally.
a new TV to play that on.
No, see, the problem with Horizon is I'm waiting for the PC release at this point,
Yeah,
so I'll
yeah,
play
it's
that in
true.
2023.
Yeah, honestly,
But
that's probably the right move for you. Yeah.
yeah, well, I mean, whichever comes first, new TV or
Hmm.
PC release, and if it's a year later, it'll probably be PC release. But who
Yeah.
knows? So, what have you been playing?
Yeah. So I mostly have been playing Elden Ring. We can start there. Some spoilers for Elden
Oh, I've
Ring.
heard of that.
Yeah. Uh, it's amazing. So last we had checked in a month ago. I was maybe a third of the way through the game. Now I'm probably over halfway. I don't know exactly how far. Um,
You're over halfway. You're
yeah.
like 75%, I would say.
Sweet. Yeah. So in terms of like for anyone who's played, I've completed the capital Landell and beat the boss there.
Yeah.
I have went to the volcano area, beat that whole dungeon, beat the
And
side
at this
bosses
point,
and the boss
we're in
there.
June. Just don't worry about spoilers. If you need no spoilers and you're somehow listening to this podcast in June,
Yeah.
uh, turn away.
Right. Well, I mean, if that's the case, the Elden Ring dies at the end. So um,
Yes,
that's the
of course.
spoiler. Yeah, so I did Volcano Manor and I beat the lava snake guy, which is pretty cool. And now I'm up in the mountain area with the giants. I'm currently fighting this huge. I was using giant as like an adjective, but he's also actually a giant. Like that's what he is. So this fire giant that is just gargantuan.
What's his
Um,
name?
his name is, I believe, Fire, and his surname is Giant. So,
Ah, okay.
uh, yeah, so he's a really cool boss, but kind of a frustrating one in terms of combat. He's pretty hard. So, trying to beat him, I spent a good half hour trying to beat him last night, um, twice. Once I got him to about a little under 5% health, maybe, and I was running from some big attack, and I accidentally ran off a cliff, which is
Did
just
you fall into a
heartbreaking.
pit?
I fell into a pit, which people never change. I should have expected that
So
about
like you,
myself. And then
classic.
another time, I got him down again to probably around 5%. And my youngest daughter, who's 2, comes up and starts talking to me and like pulling on my leg. And it was enough of a distraction that it killed me. And it's like, Um,
That's
she was super
unfortunate.
cute. It's like I was like,
That's
not
what
yelling at
kennels
her,
are
but it's
for,
also
Zach.
like, oh, I know, right? Well, my plan is I'll give her candy and like put on Disney on a TV, but that only lasts for so long, and there's only so much candy you can give
It
kids
only
before
lasts
it.
for 95% of the fire giant's health bar, it would seem.
Exactly, exactly. So yeah, I think after the fire giant area, I believe I start to enter kind of the final phase of the game, which is good. I Elden Ring it feels like it's like my favorite game right now. It's definitely in my top three. Might take the top spot for now. With recency bias, always hard to say, but I love Elden Ring. At the same time, I am looking forward to moving on to some other stuff for a while, just because there's so much to get to. But this is a game I imagine I will, or I'm sure I'll come back and play again in the future. So that's where I'm at with Elden Ring. Another game I played in May was Yoku's Island Express, which is again a kind of a Metroidvania mixed with pinball, and I found that to be just a really delightful little game. It probably took me 15 hours to complete it. Um, it's the pinball is not over the top. It's also not just a novelty. Like it's the pinball mechanics are good, but it facilitates the traversal through the open world really well. There's some really clever puzzles that make use of like pinball mechanics to get you through this Metroidvania tropical labyrinth. And it's this tropical little island, so it's super good, happy vibes. You're a
It's got
cute
great
little
vibes. Yeah.
ladybug thing, and all of the island's residents are like,
I think you might be a dung beetle.
well, you're a adorable red one.
Adorable dung beetle.
Yeah, it makes sense since you're
Right, because
rolling a
you're rolling
ball.
a ball around. Yeah.
It's a
Like a,
white ball though, so I don't know, but that would make
oh,
sense functionally.
yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, all the island's residents are super adorable, and it's kind of it's just feel good. It's kind of like Animal Crossing or something else where there's nothing in it that brings you down. So it was very pleasant, and um, I really enjoyed everything about it. I highly recommend it. I got it on sale for like $5, but I think it's definitely worth 15. I don't know what it goes for normally, but if you see it for
I
15 bucks,
I think that's right.
I think it's
15.
around that. I think it's worth that. I got it on, but if you can get it on sale, great, obviously. So check that out. Um, I don't know where that's going to rank in my list. I need to make a list of Metroidvanias, and in the future, we'll make our favorite Metroidvanias ranking video.
Yeah.
But this was really solid, and it competes with a lot of the other Metroidvanias I've played.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm curious where Yoku's lands, especially on the Metroidvania list,
Yeah,
because I mean that was a recommendation from yours truly, and I will admit that it doesn't have the substance to compete with. I mean,
Hollow
not
Knight.
much can compete with Hollow Knight, so that's kind of a dumb statement. But like even Will of the Wisps, or I don't know. I kind of actually after that I struggle to think of
Hmm.
Metroidvanias I've played that really transcend.
Yeah,
And so that's why I legitimately say I think Yoku's might come in at number 3 for me, because everything else I've enjoyed. I have some complaints about. Yoku's is just such a perfect, happy little package that
it really is.
doesn't overstay its welcome. I don't I don't really have any complaints about the game. Like I think it
Hmm.
just functionally works far better than it should. If you were to pitch this idea to me, I'd be like, that sounds like a hot mess. I don't know how that could ever happen. And 5 minutes into playing it, you're like, this just works. It just works so well.
Hmm.
It feels so satisfying to. You didn't really mention this, but the bumpers that are everywhere. It feels so satisfying to hit the bumpers and move the ball around like a pinball.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. So, did you have any like notable complaints that you can think of?
not really. There's a couple of the abilities was hard to figure out how to use initially, and I looked it up. Like one of the abilities you get throughout the game is there's these little purple clusters, and when your ball hits them, it shoots a slug into the area, and you can suck up the slug and then use the slug to like explode into something, and you can use
Like
that to
time
clear
bombs?
like time bombs. You can clear like rocks, barricades, things like that. Uh, and it didn't really explain it super well, or I missed it, which is possible. But it took me so long to figure out why that wasn't working. It felt like I was just running into them and they were exploding. And
Yeah.
the way it works is when your ball got close to one, it slows down time automatically, and then you need to press R2 a second, or like the trigger button a second time to suck them up, which was never made clear. So because it just said hold the trigger button when you get close to them, so like I would hit the trigger button to shoot towards them, and I just keep holding it, and it was just once I figured it out, it was fine, but it wasn't immediately obvious. But that's a pretty minor nitpick because I was able to figure it out with a quick Google search. Um, there were a couple of times where it felt like I had trouble finding out exactly where I was supposed to go, but that's common in a lot of games, I feel like. So, and
Yeah,
that was part of the discovery. So, no real major complaints. I think it was a solid game. It had novelty because I've never played a pinball Metroidvania, but it was a legitimate Metroidvania in its own right. It didn't rely on the pinball as a gimmick. It melded the two incredibly well. The vibes were great. The design was fun. The puzzles were interesting and mildly challenging. And I just the boss fight. There's a couple of boss fights that were really neat too. So
yeah.
it was overall just a really great game.
They did a great
Um,
job. I would love to see. I don't think they ever will. I don't know how well this sold, but I would love to see a sequel to
I would
this,
love a
or
sequel
someone try,
too.
or someone see that it works and do it again.
Right.
Because I fear that we will never get another pinball Metroidvania, and I want more now. So
I do. I would love a sequel because I loved this franchise, and I feel like they could do another island,
they've
different
already done it well.
courses.
So
It totally could be it's great, a
by the way,
great room for a
the
sequel.
fourth game that was on my queue that I couldn't remember was Lost in Random. So I had
Ah,
finished that one as well. But
man,
as
you
far as
finished. Wait, I
as
have
far
one
as
more. I got one
oh,
more
you have
for
one
you before
more.
you go. Yeah, so I started since I beat
What else did you
Yoku's
play?
3 4 days ago. I started Ollie Ollie World on the Switch,
Oh, that's
and
right.
I
Brad,
love
tell
it,
me how it is.
dude. It's really good. I don't know how far in I am at, but I probably put 2 3 hours into it, maybe a little more. It's really fun. It's a simple like it. Don't go in expecting like Elden Ring or anything, but it's like a 2D side scrolling skateboarder game where you're doing ollies and all sorts of tricks and like going obstacle courses and grinding on rails, and it's got kind of like surfer beach vibes. You're like skateboarding across like these boardwalks, but it's got kind of this cartoony, uh, I don't know, Adventure Time ish art style. And it's
Yeah,
another
it's
game where
definitely Adventure Time feeling.
vibes are super chill. The art style is really cool and pleasant. I love the colors. I love the way they draw the characters. All of the characters you meet in it are very happy, feel good. The skateboarding is really fun. It's fairly simple, but there's a little bit of depth to it in terms of the different combinations of tricks you can do, how you execute those tricks, and the different levels and course design have been fun. And it's cool because it gives you different challenges in each level. So you're not just skating to the finish line. It'll be like avoid 3 seagulls and give this guy a high five, or as you skate past the buff seagulls by the waterfalls, you have to do a different trick for each group of seagulls, like random stuff like that, where you have to complete these different challenges in
Sounds
every
cool.
course. And it's just the right mix of things to be
So
sufficiently challenging, interesting, yet relatively simple, so you can just kind of pick it up and play it. And I'm really liking it.
so far, at any point, is there any area where you can just kind of skate around? Is there a hub, or is the entire game these lines that you have to do perfectly or do a certain way? Because a lot of what I've been seeing, which I didn't quite know it was this kind of game, kind of gives me the sense that it's like I can't think of the Super Meat Boy, or like what's the other recent one, Celeste, where it's like your goal is to complete this screen perfectly, and every time you mess up you restart, or is it that kind of gameplay, or
It's more the latter. Yeah, more of that. It's not open world. At least if there is like a hub free skate area, I haven't got to it. It's more linear, two dimensional. Uh, and so I played a little bit of Celeste a few years ago. This doesn't feel like Celeste to me necessarily. It's not
I mean they're
challenging.
very different. Yeah, I just
Yeah, and
meant in
it
the
doesn't have the level of challenge, but it is a 2D. You are trying to perfectly, especially if you want to get every single like mission, that your every single task or objective, then you're trying to perfectly do these different things, and that's part of what's fun to me. And in the worldview, you kind of have a map with a couple of different regions, and it feels a
and you
little
can
bit
like
like a
travel around or what?
Yeah, but it's kind of like Super Mario or something where it's like you're kind of progressing down a path and then it'll
Sure.
fork a little bit. Um,
Okay.
and yeah, and it's just a progression of levels. So it's pretty simple. It's not. It's not. Doesn't feel like Tony Hawk Pro Skater. It's very different than that. But I actually really like what it is, and I'm the first level or two. I was like, okay, this is pretty cool, and then 4, 5, 6 levels in, I got really hooked. So I really
Hooked
like it.
for
I
you.
think I think you'll like it
Cool.
as well.
I think I will too. I've kind of gone back and forth every time I'm looking at it. It's on sale right now, and I decided I was looking into it. I almost purchased it, and then I saw that they're coming out with two DLCs that are already planned for
Oh
like
man,
additional areas and stuff.
yeah,
And I was like, you know what? I'm fine for now. I'm gonna wait till this complete. All the DLCs are out. Just get the complete package on sale.
yeah.
Get the the way I played Control. If I
Hmm.
can do that, I'm going to do that when I can. And so I decided to hold off on buying the base game for now. So
Yeah, makes
I'm
sense.
definitely that is on my future backlog. Wait, I did mention that backlog. So yeah, we're
You
good.
did, yeah. And I that it makes sense to wait for the DLC. I think that's a good plan, but you should definitely play it at some point. I think you should give it a
I
fair
will.
shake. I really do think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, I will. What platform? Switch.
I got it on Switch. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I think I'll.
it's a really good feeling Switch game too because it's
I just
you know
it. I isn't it too. Is it too technical for Joy Cons? I just don't like Joy Cons, man. I'm tired of Joy Cons at this point. My hands are too big. You know.
I haven't had any issues with my tiny
Okay.
hands. Uh, um, I haven't had any issues. It's a really nice game to take on the go and pick up and play. I'm sure it would feel great on other platforms too, though. So yeah, I recommend it
Okay.
regardless. But I'm enjoying
Yep.
playing it on the Switch.
I'll have to see what the platinum's like. Maybe I'll grab it on PlayStation. Who knows?
That's
Okay,
that's
so
the
what I
that's the downside is like a lot of the games I've been
yeah.
playing recently have been PC or Switch, which is
Yeah.
convenient or
If you don't have the
performance.
platinum, it didn't happen, man.
I know, right?
That's what
I
PlayStation wants
swear
you
I
to
beat
think.
this
And
game.
unfortunately, that's how I feel sometimes,
It
which
feels the way that way a little
is
bit, but
stupid, but yeah, it's dumb. It works. What I've been playing is, let's go chronologically. Um shoot, let me re-remember. Oh no, yeah, we're good. We're good. Okay, so I've been playing first I played Pathless. This was I think we missed a week, so this was like 2 weeks ago.
hmm
Was on my queue, my backlog to get into. I believe it was a launch PS5 game, um, and this game is very. The art style is very minimalistic, uh, very cartoony is not the right word, just very stylized, minimalistic, and we'll throw some gameplay up, I'm sure. But it's kind of all about. It's got this free flow gameplay to it where the game really hinges on traversal of the world, and there are these targets everywhere littered throughout the open world, which I feel kind of they're great and they're also bad because they're a bit of an eyesore because they're everywhere and they detract from the world to an extent. But the goal is to constantly be shooting these targets with your bow and arrow, and they propel you faster, like significantly faster. You'll be sliding and shooting these targets through the world, moving at a very quick speed, and it feels pretty cool when you're doing it. This game, if I were to pitch it to somebody, it's let's see, it's definitely got some Breath of the Wild influence in it. I would say, let's see if I can throw percentages on this. I would say 40%, no, 30% Breath of the Wild, maybe 50, 50% Shadow of the Colossus.
Mm.
I get a lot of that from it. There's these creatures that you're trying to find and hunt down, big creatures in each zone. That's the main gist of the game. So it kind of feels like Shadow of the Colossus in that way. And then I would throw whatever's left. I think, what are we at? 50, 80, 20% would be Journey. Simply
Mm.
because it's just as much as it's pulling influence from those previous two games, it is vastly simplifying everything. Not to the extent of Journey, right? Because it's still influenced by those other two games, but it's definitely that Journey vibe. And for reference, I didn't click with Journey. I know people love that game. It's touted as just an indie gem, just a classic at this point. I found it to be an elaborate screensaver. Like it just wasn't enough game for me. It didn't really engage me. I didn't click with it emotionally in the way that other people did. So I don't have that connection to Journey, and the Journey elements in this that are kind of simplified and really toned down. Um, I don't know. At the end of the day, I'm just kind of left feeling like it was okay. I enjoyed my time with it, but I got to that point about halfway, maybe further through it, where I was like, this is kind of fun. I'm curious to see where it goes. And actually, the ending was kind of cool. There's definitely some cool moments in it, but it didn't click with me on a level where I'm like, man, this game is awesome. I had enough critiques of even traversal, or I think my favorite part of the game were probably the puzzles. It has a lot of Zelda like puzzles throughout the world. A lot of them amount to um, you need to line up targets, rings actually, that you can shoot through, 3 or 4 rings before it hits a target, and then it'll unlock something. And you have to do MacGuffin puzzles to get the rings to all line up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was cool. None of it I felt was done better than even like something like Immortals: Phoenix Rising. So uh, I think if you like Journey and you like some of the other two games I compared it to, um, maybe I'm way off base with my Journey comparison. I don't know. I feel like I usually do a good job of melding games together, but I don't know. I think it's worthwhile. I don't think it's a bad game whatsoever. It just didn't click personally with me on a
Mm-hmm.
very deeply. Other than that, I played. Let's see. Recently, Inscription, um, which I actually started while you were over here,
Yeah. Did you finish
and
it?
I finished it. Yeah, I finished. I finished the campaign. There's more you can do after. I won't do spoilers because you haven't seen it, but a lot of people kind of claimed Inscription could be Game of the Year. Was that last year? I think it came out
I think it was
last year.
last year. Yeah.
So indie game um, has, I think my best description of Inscription, description of Inscription would be it is a kind of a horror like mystery puzzle card game, but it's constantly evolving, so it's hard to truly define it. But those are kind of the main elements. It's got some horror to it. There's puzzle. There's a lot of puzzles involved. Kind of reminds me of like old school puzzle games like Mist or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It gives those vibes in moments. But then there's also an overarching mystery to the entire game. So you're solving puzzles minute to minute, but there's also this mystery about what's going on. And then through all that, and most of the time, you're building card decks and playing card games.
That's like
And
so up my alley.
yeah, it you know what
The
it
few hours I saw at your place, man, I have that on my list to play this year, and I really want to fire that up. But I'm trying to get through Elden Ring. But
yeah, and
everything I saw was awesome.
it was one of those that sat on my dashboard or whatever, and I just kept looking at it, and I just couldn't get over the hurdle to boot it up for the first time. Didn't know if I ever would. And then when you were over the other night, we were like, what the heck are we going to do? And I'm like, hey, let's check this game out. None of us know what this is about. Let's play this for a little bit. And 2 days later, I couldn't stop playing. Like I beat it. I think I beat it the next day. Might have taken another day. It was longer than I expected. I'll say that about it for sure. And it goes weird places. If the game will change and you're like, what is happening? This is a different game all of a sudden. And then it'll go back to the game you were playing. It's very interesting. The ending I found, I won't say it was unsatisfying. It didn't it didn't live up to the level of how much I enjoyed everything else. I
Mm-hmm.
was loving it. There was maybe a lull in the middle where I was like, I'm not loving what I'm doing currently, but I still enjoyed it enough, and everything else I loved. And then the ending, I was like, okay, that's fine, interesting. But I will say, at the end of it all, I want to play the card game itself. And I don't know if this is based off of another card game. This is the only time I've ever played a card game like this. It's got its own set of rules. I would imagine they made this card game up for the game. Maybe it's pulled from something else. I don't know. The
It
card
was.
game is what?
I was gonna say it felt pretty inspired by like Magic the Gathering, and a lot of similarities in terms of you have creatures and they have like an attack and a defense number, and those deal damage, and then there's
Well, sure. I mean,
special abilities, like some of those basic mechanics.
that's
But
any card game though. The mechanic that was interesting about this was more of a lane mechanic, where
yeah, that was unique, I think.
um, yeah, you're setting cards down, and you're more so trying to block. They always move forward and do damage, and you're trying to control each lane. There's 4 or 5 lanes of cards, and depending on what your opponent's doing, you need to block certain lanes or whatever. And if you do damage, what was interesting about this, it's different from other card games, is if you deal damage to an empty space, that's when you actually deal damage to your opponent, whoever's sitting across from you, right? Dealing damage to their creatures doesn't actually do anything for you, really. Um,
I mean,
so
that's pretty reminiscent of Magic as well.
is
There's
it?
no if
You
there's no
have to deal
creature, it's
damage
not
to.
lane based, but if there's no creature to block, you hit them directly. But
Okay,
it's a good mechanic. And the lane,
maybe it's more similar than I realize. I
I
found it to
think
be
I think the
unique.
lanes does shake it up because it changes how
Yeah,
you think about positioning these creatures to get them into a place where
yeah.
you can
Positioning
effectively deal the
actually
damage.
matters in this
Yeah.
one. So it was good. Yeah, it was kind of like chess and cards mixed together. Very simple, not like complicated like chess. But anyways, at the end of it all, I enjoyed the card gameplay so much. I want a game that's just that. Like honestly, I want to be able to just play that game without just replaying this game because it's a very. I mean, there are certain. I imagine there's things I missed, but it's a very linear game.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't know that I necessarily need to replay it, but I want to play the card game more. So take that for what it's worth. And yeah, it's man, it's a unique game. I'm having a hard time quantifying it. It's so bizarre. It does a lot of crazy things. So I definitely will be curious to hear your thoughts once you're able to put some time into it. It is beatable in about, I would say, 2 to 3 nights.
Hmm.
Um, but very addictive. I mean, man, once you get into that, it's just you just want to keep finding out more about what's going on and the card game. You want to keep playing the card game and building your
Yeah.
deck. And I'm finding that I really love, as much as I love collecting cards in real life, I love playing card games in video games because I think it facilitates it so easily. There's nothing cumbersome about it. There's nothing that gets in the way. It's very simple. It's not a mess. You know, it
Yeah.
takes what's awesome about real life card games and just makes it very easy to do. So I had a lot of fun with that. That was a surprise. I mean, that literally cut. I started Kana before that, and once we started that night, I beat Inscription. I haven't touched Kana since. I'll be back to Kana here the next time I have some time to sit down and play a game. So yeah, lastly, Kana, I've jumped into. I've probably played about what you've played. I would imagine 8 to 10 hours. Um, so far, pretty impressed actually. I kind of was underestimating this game. I'm not sure why, but it just sat on my backlog, and I kind of wasn't looking forward to getting to it for whatever reason. I've heard some things. Maybe the gameplay feels a little antiquated, or the combat is too difficult, which usually means the combat isn't tight. Is a lot of times what that comes down to. But after getting into it, I think the combat's pretty good. I think the gameplay is great. I this game is most reminiscent to me, ironically. I don't know if it's ironic, but surprisingly, of God of War 2018. As I'm playing through it, the structure of the game, the map, the way you work your way through the narrative, and certain parts of the map open up. It's that faux open world linear game, right? It's very God of War 2018. So that would be my best structural comparison. Um, but yeah, the bosses have been great. The cinematics are fantastic. This was I forget the developer's name, but it was done by a developer who um, have done animation. They're known for animation,
Hmm.
and it's evident in this game. I mean, the
Ember
animation is
Lab.
fantastic. Ember Lab. So all in all, very impressed with Kana at this point. Can't wait to finish it. Um, it's been a joy to play. I love it's got some Pikmin aspect to it as well,
Yeah.
thrown
Yeah.
in
It
with
does.
these little rot that you collect, these little tiny guys that you collect, and I don't know, it's really satisfying collecting them and then having them move things for you. Um, it works. I've never really played Pikmin, and I didn't know that I ever cared,
Pikmin's kind of
but
fun. I liked
I
Pikmin.
really enjoy that Pikmin aspect to this game. So, and overall, I'm just kind of blown away that this is their first stab at a game. Like
Hmm.
this is phenomenal. Regardless of that, but then you factor in the fact that this is their first stab at a video game,
Yeah.
and I almost more than like they're rising to the top of the list of I can't wait to see what they do next
Hmm.
because Sometimes you play a game and you're like, oh, it's rough around the edges, this, that, and the other thing. But it's their first game. Maybe the next game will be good. Their first game is great.
Yeah.
So I'm really shocked at just how, even though I have some complaints, just how good this game is from a first time developer. And so, yeah, I'll report back when I finish that. But I really am intrigued to see where they go next, because an excellent first attempt here at a video game.
Yeah. Yeah. I liked what I played of that one. I'm excited to finish it. And I agree, for an initial video game, pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's rare. It's very rare that a first time developer hits it out of the park. Although I guess we have Team Cherry, right? That was their first. I think pretty
It
sure that was
happens.
their first game, and it might be an all timer. So it happens. There are people out there who can make games who haven't yet. And maybe we're the next Team Cherry Ember Lab. Stay tuned.
Maybe.
we're
All
we're
we have to
definitely not. We
learn
don't
how
have
to
enough
do is program video games. Once we figure that out,
program and have
write video
connections
games.
to people who make music, and it's
Yeah.
very easy to make video games from what I hear. So we'll have something coming out soon.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for that. So no, that's everything. That's everything we've been playing. So thanks if you stuck with us till the end. We appreciate you. We'll see you next time on. Oh, you know what? You can also find us over on Patreon if you've forgotten. Patreon.com/Neverlag. And yeah, we'll catch you next time at Neverlag.